right, welcome back to another episode of Broke Up, Not Broken. If you're going through a divorce, don't worry, you're not alone. This is your one-stop shop for mastering your life and your finances throughout the entire divorce process. Today, I'm thrilled to host Peter Teuscher, a celebrated leadership coach and speaker. If you get a chance, you need to check out this guy's YouTube channel, which features his podcast and is a treasure trove of insights on harnessing the power of effective communication and leadership to transform personal and professional challenges into opportunities. Great content there. So today we're going to delve a little bit more into Peter's teachings and how we can use these for ourselves and how they can be particularly beneficial for those navigating the complexities of a divorce. So whether you're just starting to consider divorce or you're in the thick of it, this episode will equip you with the knowledge and tools you need to master not only the personal challenges you might be facing, but some of the financial ones as well. So grab a cup of coffee or your beverage of choice, buckle up, and let's once again get you personally and financially empowered. Peter, it is so great to have you here, man.
Jamie, thanks so much. It's great to be with you. Really love talking about this stuff, and I'm interested to see where the conversation takes us.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate you joining us all the way from across the pond. This is going to be great. But yeah, you have some experience personally with divorce yourself. If you're open to sharing, we'd love to learn more about that situation, how you got yourself through it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm like one of many people who've been through the challenges of divorce, but you get through it. 12 years after my first marriage ended, I got remarried. So there's always hope at the end of the tunnel. But when you're going through it, and I work as a coach, so I've coached people during challenges in relationships, but also afterwards. So I've seen it from both sides. But my personal experience, like most people, they get married thinking this is the one, and I really held on to that relationship for maybe even longer than I should have. You never know. But then, when it was, when I finally was confronted with, I just can't go on like this. It actually felt quite liberating. But then you have all the realities of dealing with, the financial side of it, which you cover quite well, but also the emotional side of it, because a lot of people, their identity is wrapped up in being married. And that was one of the things that really held me back, thinking about, who am I now? Not as a married person. Who am I not as part of this couple? And I also hated the idea of this label of being divorced, right? So all these kind of beliefs that I built up and assumptions that I made about the way, life is after marriage, it's going to be so hard to find someone else, you're kind of branded as divorced and all these kind of, illogical, erroneous beliefs that I had. And that's a big part of what I do in coaching is I help people change their beliefs and negative thinking habits. And that plays a big role. But, the one great thing that came out of my divorce was I finally, I wanted to commit time to the relationship and I worked a lot, but I'd always been drawn to coaching. And after that marriage ended, I had the time to work on myself and I got certified as a coach and I, changed my life. So you can really harness those challenges you face in life and use them as a catalyst for change, for maybe doing the things you'd been putting off or weren't willing to try, right?
What was the catalyst for you? I mean, because you had a long break there, right? I mean, like you're married for a while, then you had I think you said 12 years, right? Yeah. So that was kind of like time of like finding yourself and finding your own path. Is that what I'm taking from that?
It was. I dated in that time, and it took a long time. People say, however, I was 10 years in that marriage. And they, there's all kinds of calculations on how many years it should take you to recover. There's no real set time frame, but for me, it took a long time. And I really, because I was on this personal development journey, parallel to that, I really wanted to reflect on, what were the things that I was doing in that relationship that contributed to, because there's always two parties, it's never just one person. And so what did I do that contributed to the sort of, where the relationship ended up? and what was I going to do differently, and what role did I play, and what role do I want to play in future relationships. And there's just so many elements of that I just needed the time to reflect. And the relationships I got into between the time that I met my current wife and the end of my marriage, whereas I used to always say, give it a chance, maybe let's see how it works out. I was far more clear on what I wanted. And so when I did get in a relationship and I realized, no, this isn't the right thing, the whole process helped me be a lot clearer on what I wanted out of a relationship.
So in business, we would say that's, quick, slow to hire, quick to fire, right? Is that kind of, was that your MO?
Yeah. Yeah, I had a string of relationships before my first marriage where I stayed in them too long. I knew it wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't happy. But once you get in a comfort zone, and when your relationship is a comfort zone and it's not growing, it's not evolving, it doesn't go anywhere good, in my view.
So you learned a lot of personal things, but what about financial? Were there any financial lessons learned in that? Because I mean, in my own divorce, I was divorced 7 years ago now. I realized I'm century married as well. And the handling finances in this relationship is completely different than it was the first go around. Anything that resonates there with you?
Big time. And, I knew so my ex-wife enjoyed spending money. When I first met her, she was one of those people who earned well, but didn't understand why she had nothing left at the end of the month. And so I knew that going in, and I never wanted money to be an issue. I never wanted to argue about money in a relationship. And I think the fact that we never really had any fights until the last sort of year and a half really reflected that, maybe we should have challenged each other a little more. But I'm fortunate that I got divorced in Germany. The laws aren't quite as in North America. You can, especially if your wife hasn't been working, it can be a real financial strain. Over here, there's a limit to how much that your spouse can take out of the relationship. So, but yeah, the first while after she moved out, and I kept the house because we'd only just bought it, and it was all debt. I actually rented out a room just to sort of make things work out. And I made a good living, but so that hits you emotionally or psychologically as well, because you think, wow, I've got a roommate at 40. How does that feel, right? So yeah, that was a challenging time, but I got through it. I really hunkered down, and I really I got out of debt. I just really focused on that one thing, getting myself financially stable and mentally stable. And then when I focused on myself that way, it just laid a foundation for, a really positive future.
That's amazing, man. And one of the themes that I picked up on when I was going through your website and looked at some of the blog posts that you have and the podcast and everything else, I'm going to guess this is where some of these themes came from, is your own experiences, right? So one that I picked up on a lot was the victim mentality, right? Victim mentality is a big one where, woe is me, and can this, why did this happen to me? And that thing, those types of feelings. So maybe speak a little bit about that and how, did you have that experience yourself, or is that something that you just coach people through?
Yeah. And I thought of myself as being fairly self-aware. And, I had been blogging already before that. And I talked about the victim trap and, how it's unempowering to see yourself as a victim. And then when after the split, friends are asking what happened and so on. And I found myself telling the story of me as a victim. And it didn't even dawn on me. I just thought I was relaying the facts as they kind of unfolded. But I was framing things as if I, was the guy who was hard done by. And it put me in for one, it didn't give me the right beliefs and strategy going forward to enter new relationships in a positive way. And so that state of feeling like you're a victim, it really keeps you stuck, because you don't feel like you have the power to change, because you've been victimized by the situation, by the people around you, and so on. And so I had to make a mental shift. First of all, awareness is the thing that allows change. And so when I started to reflect on the things I was saying, I stopped telling that story. I either didn't talk about it, or I kind of talked about it in a more balanced way. So recognizing that a lot of things were my choice, and recognizing the power of choice that you have in life, regardless of the situation, that's really empowering. When you recognize the things that are in your control to change, and then everything else you kind of let go.
Yeah, control the controllables, right?
Exactly.
So how would that tie in if listeners are going through that experience themselves and they're dealing with that emotional piece of this? And because I'm sure you work with some business owners and some pretty important people that are going through this, right? And they probably deal with this themselves, but there's also a lot of money at stake. So like, how does that all tie into some of the financial issues and concerns that people have in divorce?
Well, it's when it gets that far, it's usually too late to give the advice. But get the financial stuff cleared up in advance. I have a close friend who was the lawyer who did our divorce, but he said with his wife, she didn't like it, but they got here they call it a marriage contract, but it's basically a prenup. And the thing is, if you agree everything in advance, then when things get emotional, that's not the time to be talking about money, right? Because it's about getting back at the other person or feeling you're getting taken advantage of and that sort of stuff. And the thing is, even in my divorce, I gave her everything that she asked for initially, and then there would be a little bit of more here, a little bit more there. And that really stung, and it just made things worse, right? And it was all driven by the emotional stuff. We were both being driven out of fear, and fear is just this catalyst that causes you make all the wrong choices. So I think if you're already in that situation, it's really good to have a mediator and someone who can bring the emotion down or take as much emotion out of it as possible. The problem is when we had one lawyer between us to keep the costs down, which was really sensible. But if you have two lawyers and they're making money off of, how much time they spend on your divorce, they've got an incentive, whether it's conscious or unconscious, they've got an incentive to keep you bickering and fighting for more, right?
This is amazing. Now you just open up an opportunity here for me to have like 10 more questions for you. So I know that we were going to try to keep this to 30 minutes, but we may have to go over now. But I love these thoughts because we're definitely on the same wavelength. And listeners, one of the things that Peter is talking about here is the mediation process. So that's where I would recommend most people start, right? And maybe I'm biased because I'm a certified mediator myself and we mediate in all 50 states in the United States. But what I see happen a lot, to your point, is, and I actually posted a video about this and that's out there. The first step that the lawyers will take is they're going to say, hey, Peter, like, give me all your financial information. Let me sort it out for you. Oh, and by the way, first off, give me $5,000 or $10,000 because that's where my retainer starts. So I want $5,000 or $10,000 from you, and I'm going to bill you at somewhere between $400 and $500 an hour for the work we do. And then I want you to give me a bunch of your financial documents. I'm going to go ahead and organize them, and then guess what happens? They ask you for more money after that because they've burned the money basically doing nothing but organizing your information and maybe filing some documents with the courts. And that's where I'm a huge proponent of mediation, man. I mean, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and it gets complicated in all kinds of ways. And when I was going through my divorce, she had a new partner, and I kind of felt like, who am I negotiating with here? You or And so look, that's not to speak badly of her. I think both of us were feeling very vulnerable, and that's why the mediator helps so much because it kind of brings you back down to earth and helps you gain perspective because it's really easy when you feel hurt because of things that have happened in the relationship, and that both sides feel that way. It's kind of this reflex to lash out, to go, no, I'm drawing the line here, and then you don't listen to reason anymore, right?
Yeah. If you've happened to listen to any of the previous podcasts, one of the themes that tends to come out of these conversations it ties back into one of the things that I say all the time, which is you've got to put on you're now the CEO of your new life. You're the CEO of Peter Incorporated, and you need to start thinking pragmatically and practically and with no emotion. No, you need, and that carries over into other, not just on the financial decisions you have to make, but in the way you behave through the divorce, which is my text messages and phone calls are going to be super brief, and I'm going to document everything. They're going to be, my emails are going to be no more than 3 sentences long, all the stuff, right? And that helps keep some of the emotion out of it. So those are some of the tips and tricks that I learned along the way is like, hey, like we've got to start thinking this through like a business transaction, because at the end of the day, it really is, right? Like you sign a document, a legal document saying there's going to be a contractual agreement between the two of you to come together and form a union. And a divorce is just the legal separation of that union, right? It's very much a business transaction in many ways, right?
That was the most profound thing that I learned out of divorce, was that marriage is nothing more than a business contract. It's unfortunate to take all the romance out of it, but that's what it came down to. And I think the thing I'd remind people of, and I had to kind of get a grip of this myself, is that, if you give a little more than you thought you were going to, or even if you get a little more than you thought you were going to, it's not going to make you any happier. And happiness is a big part of what I talk about and what I integrate in my coaching, because for me, happiness is kind of this feedback, in terms of the way you're choosing and the way you're acting in life, or the way you're perceiving the world. That's all reflected in your level of happiness. And it's going to be a lot harder to get back on track if you end it in a bitter and very vindictive kind of way, and it just won't make you any happier. So I think that's just something to keep in mind. Maybe you can. And you see the movie portrayals of bad divorces where, I'm going to take his last cent sort of thing. And that's just not going to make you any happier, right?
Yeah. And you seem to have done such a good job of maintaining, this self-confidence and and being very resilient through your own divorce. And that's what I'm picking up. I hope I'm picking up what you're putting down here, but that was what I picked up from doing some research on you and the work that you do. Am I right?
Well, I am now, but it certainly took a long time. And, even though I'd done a lot of personal development work prior, I still found myself struggling at times because, you question yourself in a lot of ways. It depends on how the relationship ends or the reasons you came to that point. But it's a blow to your self-confidence and to your idea of who are you in a relationship. Because at the end of the day, I think a lot of men maybe feel this way, probably some women as well. But when you have your one and only marriage, you think, and then it ends, it feels like a bit of a failure, right? And so that sense of failure really undermines your confidence and your belief in, will I ever find happiness again, sort of thing. So I think, first of all, yes, you will, I think, is the important message. But it takes time. They compare the divorce process similar to the grieving process of loss of a loved one. And, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the 5 stages of grief, but, and I even apply those in change management in companies, right? When I do training there, because any kind of change process, whether it's a death of a loved one or the end of a really important relationship, you go through these stages. And it's not like you go through these steps and there is a certain amount of time, or that you go through all the stages. It's about recognizing where you are in the process and giving yourself the time to work through it. But if you find yourself stuck in one stage, then it's time to get yourself some help, because you don't need to go through it alone. And so, because then you're stuck in a kind of a loop. You've adopted some beliefs that are unhelpful. You're in some thinking habits that are keeping you stuck. And I think that's where that's really hard to get yourself out of on your own, or even with the help of friends. You need a professional, whether it's a coach or a therapist or a counselor, to help you through that.
So if I'm in that situation myself, and we were role playing this, like what were some of the things you would be telling me to do? And maybe even, this can't be a total financial conversation because we're talking about some of the emotional aspects of it, but are there any things from a financial perspective I need to be thinking about too?
Yeah. One of the impulses, and I've watched other people go through divorce, is oh, I'm single again. I'm going to live it up, right?
Yep.
And so you'll find people sometimes living beyond their means because that sort of dopamine induced happiness what they think is happiness, but that sort of hedonic pleasure seeking, because a lot of people, when they feel uncomfortable with the way when their feelings are difficult to deal with, they'll look for distraction. And what I encourage people to do is, it's going to draw it out and it's going to cause you more pain if you ignore how you're feeling, especially if that's leading to bad habits. Like, you're spending money on holidays, or you're dating again and you're spending a ton of money, whether it's, you're taking someone out, or you're spending a lot of money on getting new clothes all the time to look a certain way. The relationships that's going to make you happy is going to be someone who's going to take you for who you are, and assuming you're happy with who you are. And so that's a real pitfall when people kind of live beyond their means in order to compensate for how they're feeling. And that's a pitfall that I think it's really important to reflect on and recognize in yourself.
I always say this is almost similar to what you said about the going through this mourning process. Like, we're mourning the family unit, or the marriage. We're mourning, going through that mourning phase. And if anyone were going through the loss of a loved one, I would tell them, you're not making any major decisions, any major financial decisions for a year. We're not going to be buying a new car. We're not going to buy a new house. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. We're not making any significant financial decisions, because you have to be able to allow yourself to get through that, to work through all those feelings. And like you said, get through those 5 stages of grief. And it's the same thing with divorce. And I have this conversation a lot because we're helping people through the process. And one of the things we work with a lot of people on is the transition. We call it transition assistance. And it's that transition where, like, you now need to figure out what your budget looks like. You need to understand how much money you have coming in, going out, what you can spend, steps towards achieving the goals, the goals that you have, like what kind of practical things can we be doing there. We need to be opening up accounts in your name and credit cards and helping you rebuild your new financial profile and so on. And like, we've got to get through that stuff before you're going to start, deciding whether or not to buy a new place. Right. Like, do you have any thoughts on that? Or, would you concur?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. It's not a good time to be making any kind of major decisions. So, a lot of times people don't like that, spending time with themselves, with their own thoughts and their own feelings during those kind of times. And sure, at the beginning, you need some emotional support, but it's really important to take yourself out of your situation, out of the familiar surroundings, and take some time to really reflect on things. And then once you've processed the emotional stuff and you feel a lot more stable, then you can start making some decisions. Obviously, you don't want to forget about paying your bills and let everything fall apart. You need to make sure that the foundation is there. But before you make any kind of major life changing decisions, like, well, I'm going to reinvent myself, I'm going to leave my job, take a step back, make sure everything's taken care of, take a step back and kind of rediscover who you are now when you're not in a marriage or in a relationship, and you trying to figure out who you are right now.
Were there any financial missteps that you made along the way that you'd be willing to share?
I'd be happy to share them, but I think I was really worried about my financial situation. But if anything, it was within 3 years, it was a real blessing. My approach to getting through the divorce was head down, work a ton, learn as much as I could. So I was doing my coaching certification. I was working full time. It was easily 60-hour weeks, and I just and then I didn't spend any money on myself. I was so frugal, and I think that you can go too much the other way too. Like, it's important to still be able to treat yourself a little, as long as it fits within your means. So I'd say the best advice I can give is, be careful of extremes. People think I've got to go 180, do something completely different. After doing really well for quite a long time, I had my own business in Canada. We sold it, moved to Europe, and then I was in an executive position where, I was making good money. And all of a sudden, all these trying to keep the marriage going and paying for vacations and doing all this kind of stuff. And then overspending got me in a position that when the marriage ended, I was really afraid of this. Holy smokes! I'm in a position at this age where I'm afraid of going broke, and so that led me to kind of an extreme for a while. It paid off because I got my debts paid off really quickly, and I was, like I said, within 3 years financially so much better off than being with someone who had a bit of a spending problem. But like I say, it's about avoiding extremes. Like just being super frugal and not having any joy in life is not the way to go. But doing the opposite and just trying to spend your way through things is also. So finding that happy medium that's going to, keep you stable is the way to go.
Yeah, man. I mean, self-care and being able to treat yourself every once in a while is a big deal and a really, really impactful way to help yourself through the divorce process. That's for sure. So now we've come to the carte blanche section of our discussion today, if that's you've talked a lot about the coaching work that you do and the work that you do in your day to day. So maybe tell us a little bit more about what that looks like. And I know you have a book that is out there now. I'd love to learn more about the book and what that's all about, so our listeners can maybe get a copy of that. What is anything to share there?
Yeah, absolutely. So the coaching work that I do, you hear a lot about people who are a fitness coach and I used to be a basketball coach in Canada, but I'm very much a generalist. I just use a very systemic approach to coaching. And so it's very holistic, and I don't look at anything in isolation. So whether I'm coaching people through a relationship issue or trying to get an executive through a change process in their organization or culture change or whatever, I work with individuals, I work with companies and executives. And I also have just recently started working with young people, sort of 16 to 20, to help them. If you help people make good decisions early on in life, they tend to get along a little bit better. So, and a lot of what I have been doing with people privately is really talking about happiness being sort of a good benchmark for, how are the decisions that I'm making? Are the choices that I'm making getting me to where I want to be? Are they resulting in more happiness in my life? And the same, you can say the same about relationships. Some people will come to me sort of at midlife, or maybe it's 30s or 40s, and they've got the relationship, they've got maybe kids and a career. They've checked all these boxes, and yet they're still not happy. And so, because they've kind of thought this is the formula to happiness. And whereas that's not what happiness is, you have to define it for yourself. And it's about reconnecting with your values and making sure that the beliefs that you have in place are helping you make the right choices to create the best relationships you can, pursue the right kind of career and that sort of thing. So, and you asked about my book. The book's called Rethinking Happiness and the Beliefs That Guide You. And I go through everything. I take a coaching approach. So I give a lot of kind of perspectives from different vantage points on a variety of topics. And then I complete each chapter with a set of questions to help you reflect. So I go through everything from choices, lifestyle, relationships, communication, all those things that, are the sort of cornerstones of living, right?
Yeah, man. I wish I would have known you when I was 17 years old. That's for sure. I could have used your help, man. It's good that you're
mentored. I had someone to mentor me, at that age as well, because there's so much untapped potential. But one of the things that drives me to coach is because everyone, no matter what stage of life, we all have potential to grow and change and get more out of life.
Even Tom Brady has a coach. Right. I had a coach for many, many years, and he probably has a coach now helping him through this next phase of his career. And a lot of the people, tons of professional athletes, every professional athlete has a coach, and so many executives that are out there that are doing great work have coaches. So I'm a firm believer in it. I'm a firm believer in surrounding yourself with people that are there to support you. And I call it creating team you. Right. And that's one of the things that I always share with people in going through a divorce is you need to surround yourself with people that are there that can help you through this and not try to shut yourself off. But in that, those comments you made about the happiness, like just a second ago, I was as you were bringing us through that your explanation of the work that you do coaching wise, I was thinking about like when I was going through when leading up to my divorce, I thought like I had to have the big house with the white picket fence and the three kids and the two nice cars in the garage and all the other stuff. That was going to bring me happy. That was what I was supposed to do. That's what happiness is all about. And I was absolutely miserable. Absolutely miserable.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because, my current wife, when we first met and we were, getting serious, and we both said, look, I don't ever want to get married again. Both of us said that. But the thing was, it just evolved, and she brings out the best in me. Right. And I think recognizing what kind of traits come out in you in the relationship that you have is a really good indicator. And then again, when you've worked on yourself and you've found a way to make yourself happy, I think happy people tend to be better partners, better citizens, better neighbors. When you come from a place of joy and happiness, you're going to make choices that are going to help you have a more harmonious life and better interactions with people. So I think that's a big first step when you've coming out of a divorce, figure out what happiness means to you, understand how you've been undermining it till now, and then find new ways of living that are going to help you get there. And then you'll find another happy person to connect with.
And spending wisely while you're doing it.
Absolutely. People say money can't buy you happiness, but not having it sure makes you miserable sometimes.
So it can buy you a jet ski. Right?
Yeah.
It can buy you a jet ski. Right?
Look, I know firsthand that the stress of worrying about, earning well and then still not being able to make ends meet, that is a really stressful thing. And so making sure you don't get yourself in that situation, it's really, it's going to be it's going to be hard to find happiness. Maybe a monk, in a monastery can be happy with that, but everyday people trying to live, regular lives are going to struggle if the financial side isn't taken care of.
Yeah. That in our world, we call that lifestyle creep, and where you earn $100,000 a year and you spend $100,000 a year, then you get a new job and you earn $125,000, and now you're spending $125,000. You're not saving that extra 25. It's a trap that a lot of us fall into, but another story for another day. So thanks, Peter. Thank you so much for joining me today, man, and sharing such impactful stories. I mean, I think like the stories that you have and the experience that you have, I think has been really impactful for me, even in this just short period of time that we've been together. And listeners, if you want to dive deeper into Peter's leadership and communication strategies, check out his YouTube channel, check out his website at peterteuscher.com. And if you're seeking support during your own divorce, we here at Allegiant Divorce Solutions are here to assist. You can always visit our website at allegiantds.com for expert advice and additional resources. You can also book a call with us there for a complimentary consultation to see how we might be able to assist you with your divorce. But for those of you that are out there, don't worry, that are driving right now, you're not in a place to jot down this information. We're going to put all the links to the websites and everything else in the show notes, so you'll have access to that. But always, always, always subscribe to our podcast for more enlightening discussions. And remember, each step you take is a step towards a stronger, more resilient you. So until next time.